Hello, hello. Wow. Welcome to the next episode of Option Plus podcast. I can't believe it happened, but after a long time, I decided to publish some of my talks and some of my other projects under this podcast. So I guess we are officially on again. I got rid of the weird AI voice. I was using the intro AI voice before it was cool. But let's get to the content. So in this episode, I am talking about contrarian thinking and Bitcoin. It was a speech I gave to the participants in the international round of Olympiad in economics. So students who were trying to compete in their knowledge of economics. It was quite fun. So the judges had to rate the tests, and someone had to entertain them. So I was a part of a slot that was called Meet the Mentor, and I was trying to convince the students to do some contrarian thinking, to not only listen to what they're taught, but to see if other ways, other options are not better for them. So I hope you like this episode, and it's quite non-standard for me. And actually, after I gave this speech, I spoke to quite a lot of students. Many of them were interested in these topics, and they wanted to kind of learn more about this way of thinking, and especially about Bitcoin. Many of them, however, to my surprise, were very conservative, and I think that young people should not be conservative. They should experiment. They should play with new things. They should learn. And when you are starting out, you don't have a mortgage and a job and kids and many other things. So that should allow you to experiment. And I'm usually, when I meet people, young people who are conservative, I'm quite surprised that I, as an older person, I'm more punk and more experimental than many of them. So I guess it's a personal trait, but that's how it is, and that's how I perceived it. So regardless of your age, let's talk about contrarian thinking. So I was asked to entertain you for a while, and as Monica said, I have a trouble describing what I do, which is what this session is going to be about. And I was thinking about the topic, and I would like to ignite something that is called contrarian thinking, or ecology of thought. So when you hear many successful people talk, they usually give you a fortune cookie, bite-sized smarts about what led them to where they are, and habits of successful people. You need to wake up at 6 a.m. and have a coffee, and then do creative writing and things like that. And I want to tell you not to do any of these things, because I think there is value in going against the stream and doing some other things. So usually these smarts of successful people are correlations. So they first become successful, and then they will tell you what they think led to their success. So I am a mildly successful entrepreneur. I'm apparently not a billionaire. I don't even wear a suit. So I started more than a dozen of companies, most of them unsuccessful, some mildly successful, and
I'm not even going to tell you what mistakes to avoid, because you will probably make your own. What I want to tell you about, though, is to think about not doing what everyone else is doing. So what are they doing? So most of the people, they wake up usually before 5 and 7 a.m. just in time to drive their kids to school or send them to school, and just in time to enter the morning ritual of the working people, which is the traffic jam. So then they sit in a car, listen to music or podcasts, or start doing their morning meetings. Then they spend 4 hours maybe in a closed office, much like this one, and they're staring at the computer screen. Then comes lunchtime, so everyone from all the buildings, they almost at the same time move to cafeteria or a cantina. They get the lunch. Of course, it takes ages because everyone is doing the same thing. Then they come back, spend 4 more hours, usually staring at the screen. Note that I'm not saying working, because most people do not actually work 8 hours a day. It's usually a game of pretend, which is nice. Just that you know that everyone is doing that. So if you find it hard to do any meaningful work for 8 hours a day, just that you know that most people don't actually work 8 hours a day. There's social media, there's colleagues in the cafeteria, and many more interesting things to do than work. So this is what most people do, and I think there is value in thinking if your life could be a little bit different. It's many people say it's like, especially young people, it's going against the stream. So we have mainstream and we have this either going against the stream, which is rebelling. I think finding a parallel stream is even a little bit better. But one of the most important ways to look at this is going against the monoculture of thought. So if everyone thinks the same, then there is no entrepreneurial edge. There is nothing that we can make use of, and there is very little creativity involved, and very little of creative problem solving. So, for example, on financial markets, one of the best ways to be successful is to have an edge, to know something that no one else knows, and trade based on this knowledge. Most people, of course, just buy some index fund and they're happy with the general performance of the market. But this is another way, is going against the edge. If it's something that everyone already knows, it's already included in the price, it's priced in, so there's no upside to be made. So this contrarian thinking. Another example, not from financial markets, how you can look at it is, when I was hiring people, I fortunately don't hire people anymore. But when I was hiring people, I've read all these beautiful CVs. They said, okay, I studied this school, I had good grades, and so on. And if a person that studied a school, even a good school, came and said, okay, I had good grades, that tells me that they know exactly what all of their classmates know. That means they have no edge. So if someone who didn't have good grades, like me, and had some experience or was interested in some other things comes, then they clearly have an edge. So it's not outstanding to be best of class. It is outstanding if you, of course, learn what you have to learn, but then if you are specialized in something, so you have some kind of unique ability. Unique ability is also a problem. I never did economics Olympiad, but I was doing Olympiads in programming, and I was pretty good at it. Usually first or second in Slovakia. But if you it allowed me to go to university basically without any admission tests or anything like that. But it wouldn't even lend me a job in Facebook or Google. It's not that interesting. And the reason is not that I was not a good programmer. I still think I'm a good programmer. The problem is that being really a world-class programmer is really difficult. So the way you can have a unique ability and be world-class is to combine two things or three things that you are really good at. So for me, currently, it is cryptography, artificial intelligence, and economics. I'm interested in cryptocurrencies, in Bitcoin, and that is one of the nice contrarian thoughts that is emerging. And you can do that. You can, of course, please choose something else than I chose. But if you combine these things that you are quite good at, you create something that is unique on the market, and that allows you to stand out. How do you ignite? So, of course, this is like a motivational talk, think different and read some books and so on. But I think the best way to ignite this contrarian thinking is to ask question, which I didn't invent. It's from Peter Thiel, who is a legendary investor, one of the first investors in Facebook and the original PayPal mafia. And his question to all of his employees and all of his potential hires is, what do you think is true about this world, but almost no one would agree with you? So contrarian thinking is a little bit different than rebelling. The government says this or that, so I will think the opposite, which is not very useful because you are basically following someone's lead, just inverting. So in order to have an edge, of course, the contrarian thought has to be true. It shouldn't be just random gibberish that is made up. So I have a few of these thoughts. I hope you will not agree with me, so I can keep my edge. But I'm going to tell them so you can maybe look at how these contrarian thoughts are emerging and also how it relates to economics. So the first thing is parallel societies and parallel financial markets. So I was lucky enough to experience the first growth of the internet. I'm not old enough to be at the birth of the internet, but I experienced growth in the late 1990s and the dot-com bubble and all these things. And what is nice about it is, if you wanted to understand how internet currently works, and I mean like the low-level technical stuff, why are things the way they are, it would be very difficult. For me, I watched it grow up. So I know that, for example, this protocol is designed this way because I was there when people were trying to solve some kind of problem, and I knew, okay, this was the culture at the time. This was why we were deciding between this or that, and this way you have a very different understanding of how things work than if you read a textbook about internet protocols, because you didn't experience the choices and the decisions. You didn't see the paths that the internet protocols did not take. Unfortunately, I don't have a time machine, so you cannot do this. But I have something better. Now is the time when the new parallel financial system is being born. It is in the form of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and many other technologies that were started basically along the time of the early internet. So Bitcoin is a free market idea that grew up of something that is called a cypherpunk mailing list, and they started something that is called Cryptanarchy, which is on my T-shirt, Institute of Cryptanarchy, which I founded. And it's a first place in the world where we only use Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. So no state fiat currencies are allowed. And I think that if you want to understand how these things in economy work, well, we're too young to have experienced the founding of Amsterdam Stock Exchange in the, I believe, 1602. Please correct me if I'm wrong. We are too young to have experienced even the birth of current monetary system, so depegging from gold and the current system based on US dollar. But we are just in time to experience the birth of new economy based on Bitcoin. And it's not just cryptocurrency. I remember there was a guy from London who have started a stock exchange on top of Bitcoin. Of course, it was shut down because he started it under his own name, and the regulators didn't like that. He was just basically helping marijuana growers grow their wheat, so they would raise capital for, the lamps and all stuff that you need to grow wheat. And then the companies would pay dividends from that using Bitcoin. But there are all these projects that are being started right now or being developed. There are new forms of financial derivatives that have never ever been seen before in a traditional financial system. And it's all open source, open access. Anyone could participate. Usually, when you are playing with traditional financial instruments, I don't know, contract size for a future for a commodity is often $100,000. So you cannot just play with it. You cannot get a feel for it. You can read about it in a textbook. You can, create a fake trading account. By the way, I don't recommend trading. It's just experience. I'm really bad at trading. But if you want to try, you can use $20 and trade with real money, and you can get the feel, get the experience. So I think that this is a very interesting place to be, where you can learn by actually doing and actually seeing the things being created and participating in the creation. What is also nice is where you understand the choices that were made along the path, and especially the differences to a traditional financial system. So you can see, okay, so why are these guys using whatever commodity settled futures instead of cash settled futures and many other things? And it's why are there arbitrage opportunities in some places and so on? So this is another stream you can take, which is outside of the mainstream, and it is what is interesting, in my opinion, to try right now. Many people would say that okay, but it's small, it's almost no one uses it. I really like that, especially when my friends from Czech Republic say, "Oh, no one uses Bitcoin," then I tell them that there are probably 10 times more Bitcoin users than users of Czech crown. So it's not small, but what is true is because it happens on the internet and it's peer-to-peer, it's very hard to measure. So we are constantly bombarded with all the statistics about GDP and all these macro averages and all these things. By the way, whatever you do, please avoid macroeconomics. It's total snake oil science, not even science. It's numerology. But what is true that it is quite hard to see peer-to-peer interactions. You know, when someone goes to a market and buys tomatoes, it's a transaction between two people, and it is very hard to reflect it in statistics. I was trying the other day to see the size of the parallel or shadow economy. So these peer-to-peer interactions where the state is not involved and people just meet each other and do an exchange. And the truth is, no one has any clue. I have seen studies ranging from 10% to 70% of GDP. All of the studies admitted they have no idea what is the true number, and the range is just so huge. By the way, some countries include these estimates of GDP of parallel economy in the GDP numbers, and some don't. So, for example, in Italy, when you see Italian GDP, they guesstimate what is the size of the shadow economy, and they include it in the GDP to appear bigger. So with Bitcoin, it's very easy to be fooled by this thought, it's not so big. So one number you should look at if you have this feeling is the volume of traded Bitcoin on exchanges, which again, we don't know what portion is actually traded on centralized exchanges and what portion is traded peer-to-peer. But the volume on centralized exchanges is quite huge, and if you have this feeling, this is a pretty good antidote. So how does the market innovate? What is the mechanism? It's the same reason why I like contrarian thinking and why I also like Bitcoin. It's competition, and it's kind of like evolution. So it's the same way that thought emerges in this ecosystem of thoughts. So it's usually not that some smart person disproves that this is not the way. No, someone just built something better, and the old way just dies out. And that's how we discover, who is the best healthcare provider, who is the best mobile phone operator, who is the best maker of computers, operating systems, everything like that. You don't have to win an argument. You need to provide a better product or service. This is true also with Bitcoin. We are not saying, it's probably not so good if someone can just print a bunch of money and lower our purchasing power. What if we just build better money where this is not possible? And we'll see, what will people choose? I think this is also the way how better thoughts emerge. Of course, you can scientifically disprove some old theory that doesn't work. But I think it is more interesting to indulge yourself in this kind of contrarian thinking and create the better thought that will replace the old one. In this case, failure is crucial to the improvement of our condition, of the markets, of the thoughts, and so on. So it's okay to fail. And as I said, I'm mildly successful entrepreneur. So that means most of my companies failed. And I have learned how not to do these exact things. But then you discover some things that work and replace the old ways. It also means that winners do not last very long. In the 90s, for example, we were all afraid of the monopoly of Microsoft, and everyone was using Windows. It was really hard to escape. Now, do you, by the way, know what is the most common operating system on the planet right now? Most installations? Sorry? Yes, it's Linux. And it was replaced because it was just cheaper. It runs on all our routers. All your Android phones are Linux, and it runs on most of the servers, and even Microsoft now embraces Linux. So winners do not last very long unless they have some kind of advantage, which can be a good advantage. They simply just provide a better service, or a better advantage, which means the government told everyone else that their product or service is forbidden. One more thing, which is contrarian, and then we will go to questions, is that we are very focused on stability. And I believe that stability in this world does not exist anymore. Like when I was explaining this maybe 3 years ago, people were looking at me, oh, what are you talking about? You know, my wage is the same. They might have discounted for inflation, but, you know, everything is stable. You know, the shops have all the products, and we have a good life. And then came the pandemics, and we have seen total chaos. You know, the prices of oil went like double and half and double again. We have seen the collapse of many healthcare systems, and the collapse is, especially in Central Europe, it is still happening. And I think that this is the state of the world for many, many years to come. On the other hand, I think that stability is overrated. So if you try to hold to it and, you know, hope that it will take you somewhere, then you will most probably be disappointed, because things are volatile. When I talk back to the topic of Bitcoin, when I talk to people, they would say, "Oh, it is so volatile. You know, it was whatever 10,000, then 20,000, then 60,000. Now it's only 25, and so on." And my question is, okay, if it was a fixed amount of dollars, would it provide protection against inflation? Would it be actually fun? Do you want another dollar somewhere in your computer? You know, why? What is it? As you hopefully know, I believe you do, prices are an information system. So prices are supposed to change, and you know, a vacation in summer and vacation in October shouldn't have the same price, because there's not the same demand, and the supply also changes. So the prices are telling us very important information. But on the other hand, we've been so used to this stability of employment, of prices, of, you know, things, of inertia, basically, of things going the same way all the time, that we are super stressed if the prices change and if things around us change. I believe it is better to embrace it. It will remove a lot of stress from your life, because if you expect the world to be volatile, and the world in fact is volatile, then your expectation and reality match, and there's no stress. Of course, you need to prepare for that, but but there are ways to do it. There are, of course, many ways how to handle this volatile nature of the world. So basically, you can be dynamic. You can hedge the risk, which you can do on financial markets with many things. If you know you are going to buy something next year, you can hedge the price. But you can also embrace the volatility. You can say, oh, okay, so this went up and this went down. Means I can now change my behavior, and I can buy what is cheap and not buy what is expensive. If you're an entrepreneur, you can go and produce what is expensive, and by doing this, you are making use of the economy the way it's supposed to do. So. The way it's supposed to work. So the way it's supposed to work, we have a lot of scarce resources, and we have these markings, these notes and electronic money that we use to decide who gets to use what based on what they desire, what they prefer, and what they need in life. So not buying something expensive means saying, oh, it's not so important for me, so I'll let someone else use it, and someone else can use it. They're willing to pay a little bit more for it, but it makes things work in the presence of scarce resources. So, if your philosophy in life and your business depends on stability, my contrarian thought would be to very carefully rethink this and don't get disappointed. Okay, I think that's it for now, and I think we have time for questions. Thank you very much.
If you are a regular listener of this podcast, or if you found value in this podcast, there is a really easy way to show your support and help us grow. Download any Podcasting 2.0 app such as Fountain or Breeze. They work both on iOS and Android, and then follow the Option Plus podcast and start listening. You can share your thoughts on this episode by sending a boost, that's like a payment with a message, and see what other listeners have to say, or create clips of the best moments. Getting started is easy. You can top up your Fountain or Breeze wallet with a Bitcoin Lightning transaction, or even a bank card. I hope this podcast brings value to you, and it would be great if you can support this podcast by paying us this value. You probably spent some time listening to it, so you already demonstrated it is not worthless. So it would be nice to reward the podcaster, in this case me, with what this podcast is worth to you. The alternative for podcasters such as me is advertising, and with podcasts that are created for the sake of advertising, you become the product and not the customer. I would personally like you to remain a customer, not a product, and I would like your support in allowing this podcast to continue in a sustainable way. Try it out. Thank you for listening.